Now, officially, it says starting, setting up your webinar for Facebook Live. I got the loading bar.
Hello, world.
It's taking its sweet time, as usual. And it always takes me back to my general news feed. So I have to click back to my page and then back to my video. And then, I love Facebook, but I hate Facebook sometimes too. And now it's being slow. Okay, there's my video. And I'm talking. And okay, I can see our comments now on Facebook. We are good to go. And I can see our comments on Zoom. So, okay, we are officially starting. Let me get in the middle of my screen because it's going to drive me crazy if I'm not in the middle of my screen. And hello, everyone watching, and welcome to Authors Just Talk About Gardening. I am HP Holo here with three of my author pals, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and then we are going to talk about fun stuff to do with dirt. I guess let's see here. What end are we going to start from? How about Christopher? You can go first.
All right, I'm Christopher Woods. I write science fiction, fantasy, humor, and I don't know. You may have seen some of my stuff around. I write some stuff for Chris Kennedy and a few things I did myself. But that's me.
Nice, Cedar. How about you?
Hi, I'm Cedar Sanderson. I write mostly science fiction and fantasy. And let's see, my last novel to come out was The East Witch, and the next novel to come out will be The Case of the Perambulating Hat Rack. So like
That
Chris,
is a great title.
Yeah, I'm going into humor. That story just took on a life of its own, like the hat rack.
All right, and William.
Oh crap. Hold on. I'm not prepared. I was whoring.
You can't remember your name?
I am William Joseph Roberts. I write pretty much anything that comes to mind because the evil mind squirrels are demanding me to do it, like sci-fi, horror, fantasy, and this weird other thing that I'm working on the side.
You don't need to talk about that.
And then I
wrote
a thing with this guy, and people seem to kind of like it, except for that one person that gave us a 1-star.
True.
There's always one person.
Yep, there's always that 1-star. Though, sometimes the 1-star reviews can be the most hilarious ones, even if they don't intend to be.
Oh, they sell the book.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even with like my Flux Runners, the 2-star review told exactly what it was. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, you're going to tell people what it's about. Great.
I remember reading a review of one of Jacob's books where I think the complaint was that too many explosions or something like that. And I'm like, that is the opposite of a problem, man.
Exactly.
but yeah, okay. Anyway, I'm again HP Holo. I wrote The Wizard's Way, and I also have a giveaway going on right now. And where it's me and 5 other authors, we've teamed up to give away a whole bunch of signed steampunk books to people who enter. The link is in the description for this panel, as is the links to basically everyone's websites here and everyone's books that they've mentioned. So go click and buy stuff and enter stuff. But now we are going to get to the actual topic, which is gardening. So first question about gardening, what region are you guys in terms of how good the growing season is and how good the weather is? I'm in I guess what is categorized as planting zones 7 and 8. So my weather is like really mild. It's really awesome. I'm in sort of the upper west corner of South Carolina. Where are you guys gardening at?
So I'm in zone 6 technically, although I think it's bordering into 7A. I'm in southern Ohio. So sometimes we have really cold winters and other times we have mild winters. I can still grow things like apples, which makes me happy, but my soil is not good for blueberries, which makes me sad.
Oh.
I'm in Middle Tennessee, so I'm probably the same zone as you are, the 6 or 7. I don't know.
Well,
I've never checked.
7A. I'm 7B.
Okay.
I mean, I'm right there bordering on where Heather's at. Which we're in the Mediterranean region. I've got pomegranates growing out front here. And unfortunately, I've got to move them here in the next couple of days. But we can grow pomegranates, olives, any kind of Mediterranean crop will grow in this zone because of the heat and the temperatures and the humidity.
Cool. I didn't realize we could grow quite that many things. I've just been doing like tomatoes and sort of not boring things, but really basic things. But oh, hey, we have some viewers. Hi, Yvonne and Nick. Welcome to the panel. My next question. Where, huh?
Oh God.
They're over on Facebook. So yeah, I'm monitoring comments on both Facebook and Zoom. So hello, everyone.
Well, if Yvonne's
question.
here, there goes the neighborhood. If it's the same Yvonne I'm thinking of.
It probably is. Oh. Now, how long have you guys been gardening, and why did you start? Let's start with Cedar on this one.
Oh, I've been gardening since I was big enough to walk. So Dad was a sergeant in the Air Force, and Mom stayed home with us kids. So we gardened out of practicality. We needed the vegetables. We also hunted, fished, and trapped. So, but I've been gardening, and let's see, we started out. I can remember gardening in the Willamette Valley in Oregon, which is one of the most fertile places in the world. But after Dad left the Air Force, we moved to Tok, Alaska, which is technically Zone 1. There is no guaranteed frost-free date up there, and we still had a garden, but it was a challenge.
What do you grow in Alaska? Like, what grows up there?
Well, the area that we were in the interior, there's permafrost about 3 feet below the soil, so you get stunted spruce trees. And we grew lettuce and some cole crops. I can remember growing broccoli. The thing I most remember growing up there was flowers, like Icelandic poppies, but we did grow some vegetables. Definitely not tomatoes, though.
Cool. Christopher, how about you? When did you start gardening?
Kind of in the 70s, I guess. I was raised on a 74-acre farm, and Dad planted tobacco, and he always had a big garden that we helped in as kids. I don't remember much about it. I just remember, I did work the garden. I didn't learn anything from it. Once we moved to Florida, I didn't garden for years. And then when we came back up here in 99, after my mother passed away, Dad wanted to plant gardens again. So I actually paid attention this time and learned a little bit about it. Now, I'm not the greatest gardener, but I'm enjoying learning. So, since 99, I've done one probably every other year anyway.
Cool. And William, you've been having some gardening adventures recently.
Oh God, yes. I've been gardening since as far as I can remember. I mean, my whole family, they all had gardens. That's how you supplemented what you brought in, besides hunting and all that. I grew up in Southern West Virginia. I used to walk behind the tiller with Papaw, this big god-awful monstrosity, and I'd help him steer it. And, I'm like 4 years old and just
hanging on the handlebar
behind and going with him. But I was in the garden helping. Spent my summers in the garden. We'd pick our lunch straight out of there, wash it off with what water we had, and just go back to work. So I've done a good bit of gardening over the years. I have yet to figure out how he managed to get his corn so prolific, and just, the man was a miracle worker when it came to the gardens. And he ran 3 Mile Curve up there near Logan. He had about 4 acres he gardened there, and the old man let him use the land. He had another half acre up the holler from the house. He had 2 plots there at the house, and there was another one down at Wanda at one point that he had tended. And I don't know how many times I'd go with him, and we'd just take bushels of stuff around to families that needed stuff. We'd take tomatoes and potatoes and corn and squash or whatever, and just, here, no questions asked. You just take it, drop it off, no matter if they were arguing about it or not. Because some people did, because they were too prideful. But they argue as he was walking away, and they go ahead and keep it, I guess. The recent gardening woes that we've got is we have a DOT bridge project going on, and they actually purchased 0.014 acres. But the whole problem came about with the temporary easement where we had to move everything back so they've got room to do what they need to do. And they're redoing the drainage and all that for the bridge and the road right here. And I think they're going to move the main sewer line. So I had to move my privacy fence back 2 panels, so 16 feet. And in doing that, that takes out my tomato beds, my blackberry beds, my blueberry beds, the cucumber, and the pea bed. Not to mention we had to move the fence. We've already moved all that, got all that rebuilt out back. The fence has been moved. We've moved the Viking aronias, the blueberries, and the blackberries. We got those rehomed already. I have to move my pomegranates, the beautyberry, and the plums, which are going to be the hard ones. Now, see, most of these fruiting trees and bushes, they've been in the ground for 8-9 years. Last year was the first year that we got produce off of the plums. I was fighting squirrels. I mean, literally, I was chasing them down the street to get my freaking plums back because here they go with a plum bigger than their head. And same thing with my apples. I kept stealing my freaking apples. But and we got pomegranates. The first time we had pomegranates last year. And it's big and pretty. They fell off, but it's okay. It's the first year. I need to trim it. I need to set it up. So I gotta move it in the back. Hopefully it transplants, trim it, fingers crossed. Meg actually came up with this brilliant way to move the plums. Instead of paying somebody thousands of dollars to come in here with that big scooper thingy, because it will possibly hit the sewer line that I didn't realize was there when we planted the trees.
Oh no.
Or actually I don't remember if it was there or if they installed it, because they did a lot of stuff underground. They just shoved the pipe under there and all that stuff. So that might have been why. But we're going to dig around, about 2 feet out and start cutting the roots, work it around, get all the dirt off of it, chain my engine hoist into the back of the truck, and turn it into a mini tow truck, and then hoist this thing up out the ground, cut the taproot, run it right around the backside, drop it in the hole, cover it up with dirt. We're good. Hopefully. We're going to take fresh compost, put that in there. I've got this barrel that had horse manure. It's half full of what's left of horse manure after it's soaked in there, because that's great fertilizer.
Yeah, manure tea is the best.
Yeah, exactly. You take one of these plastic barrels, fill it with manure, fill it with water, and just use that for your watering. You go through, fertilize everything like that. But
manure tea was one of the strangest things for me to learn about when I started gardening. I was like, what? What is that?
Well, it's just like worm tea. If you do a worm garden, you set up a worm farm, you want to get that leached off worm tea, because that's just good stuff.
Oh, I'm copying a link for someone. So give me a second, and I will start being interesting again.
I learned how to do manure tea and stuff because Mom and Dad were really interested in permaculture before permies was cool. Now permaculture is kind of the new thing, but they had a copy of Bill Mollison's book, which you can't get for love or money anymore. It's out of print for a long time. But when after my divorce, I lived with my dad for several years, and I was managing a small sustainable agriculture farm for him. And we had a small garden on that, but we were more doing silviculture and sustainable rewilding of pasture into berries.
Ooh, cool. Now, what is silviculture? I haven't heard this phrase before.
So silviculture is basically turning the forest into a food garden.
Oh, okay, cool.
So we had a sugar bush. We were tapping for maple syrup. But Dad and I were also getting rid of non-productive trees like wolf white pines. This is in New Hampshire, and trying to replace it with other trees that would bear something useful.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very long-term plan, and unfortunately I wasn't able to see it to finish because I moved to Ohio.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but it's still there. Hopefully no one bulldozed it or anything.
No. The the farm has now been sold. Dad actually moved to North Carolina, but I'm sure that the forest is still going because
Mhm.
nobody's going to mess with it. It had been logged and all the useful lumber taken out,
Ah, yeah.
so nobody's going to go in and bother what's there now.
Nice. Well, as for how I started gardening, my family, my grandparents grew up on farms when they were younger, and then when they moved, they were originally from New York and moved down here, and we didn't really have. They were from farm families, but that didn't really carry down to my parents' generation and my generation. But my grandmother in particular, um, really loves gardening and really kept a really healthy vegetable garden and just loves flowers. And to the point where, you know how a lot of grandmas will send you home with food whenever you come to their house? My grandma will send you home with a random plant. Like she's gotten in trouble for taking clippings away from like public libraries and things because she wants to root them. and my favorite story about my grandmother is she, as she's aged, she does sometimes have issues with tripping over things in the garden and whatnot, but doesn't let it stop her. But one day she fell and she and my grandma or grandfather got in a little tiff over it, and he said to her, "One day you're gonna die in that garden," and her response was, "Well, I'll die happy." And so nothing will stop her from gardening at all. And my mom gardens somewhat, but it's mostly like plants and flowers. And so there's something of a green thumb in my family. But I never really helped as a child. And someone's having trouble getting into the panel. JF Holmes, I will let you in a second once I finish my little part of the conversation here. But you should be able to watch it on Facebook though. I don't know why if it's not showing for you. But there is a link above your, or there is a link up in the comments, JF, to the Zoom where you can register. So, all right. So as for why I started gardening, I didn't start gardening myself until I moved out of my parents' house, and I'd always wanted to have my own little garden, but at that particular house, I loved everything about this house. I loved all of its trees. I loved that it was a really cute little cottage, and and the downside that I realized too late was that all these trees meant a whole bunch of shade. And so I started my little garden. It didn't happen. And so while I lived in that house, a garden was just a no-go. My soil wasn't that good. My and the sun was not good, and it just wasn't. But after I got married, Jacob and I moved into a house that was just all yard and all sun. So I was like, heck yeah, I'm gonna do this. And around the same time, I was also cooking a lot more at home. And so, and I do remember eating all those wonderful garden grown vegetables from my grandma's house. And I was determined that I was going to make a little kitchen garden. And so that really got me into gardening. And so I add a little bed every year. And plus, it's just a fun little thing to do. I love being outside. I love playing in the dirt. And so, yeah, I don't grow enough that I can sustain my family on it. But I will get like a good 2 or 3 bowls of pasta sauce out of my garden every year, and it is just the best pasta sauce. All right, I'm going to start my next question and then see if I can get the link to JF again. My next question is, when you started gardening, what did you grow? And how about William?
Primary tomatoes and peppers. I mean, hands down, you got to have bell peppers, tomatoes, jalapenos, cayennes. I mean, that's basic staples we always grow.
Nice. How about Cedar?
Oh, let's see here. When I started growing things on my own, I wanted to grow things that I like to eat. So lots and lots of heirloom varieties of tomatoes and herbs and edible flowers. I made it my mission to grow as many different species of edible flowers as I could manage because I just loved the idea. They don't add a lot of taste, but they sure make a salad pretty.
How about you, Chris?
I guess when I recently started the gardening here, tomatoes, peppers, green peppers, and banana peppers both. I didn't bother with the hot peppers because Wendy and Cheyenne, neither one could eat hot peppers. And let's see, I did squash and zucchini and cucumbers, corn. Last year I did some radishes and made so many radishes that there's no way I could eat them all.
You know, you can pickle radishes.
I did pickle some radishes, and I don't like them.
And you can roast them. You can roast them like you can carrots and stuff, and they're really good that way.
Well, now that might be good. I was not happy with the pickled radish, though. I think did you try some of those? Did I send one of those with you, Scott or William?
Yeah, and they were good.
Did you ever try them?
Yeah, I ate the whole thing. I mean, it wasn't the best pickled radishes I ever had, but you're good.
I didn't like them at all.
Radishes are weird for me. Like the radish has to be, I can't even articulate what has to be good about it. I know when I like a radish, and I don't like most radishes.
They can't be too strong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and radishes can be surprisingly overwhelming sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Like the only radish I've ever really consistently enjoyed is actually a pickled Japanese daikon radish, and that's mainly just because my local sushi shop uses them, and they're so good in sushi. Like you wouldn't expect it to be that good, but it's really good. But it's not the same as the radishes we grow here.
No, daikon's really different. I introduced my husband to daikon, and now he wants me to grow them, and I'm like, that's quite a lot of bed prep.
I think they're, I guess, milder, I guess is the word for it.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm getting comments now. Let's see. Oh, someone's having trouble getting in for some reason. I'm going to have to look into that once we get to the next question.
With turnips, radishes, horseradish. Horseradish is a very good plant to plant, especially if you have decently loose soil. If you've got clay, we just pulled a monster about yay big around out that we didn't think was there, but as we were digging up the rest of the dirt that was where the blackberries were, it had gotten down into the clay and just kept going. And it was, this thing's huge.
So horseradish, anything that has the name horse in it is big, and horseradish will grow like a weed.
Oh yeah.
We had horseradish up in New Hampshire that I had trouble harvesting because it got down in the rocks, and I could get off pieces of the root, and then it had come back from what I couldn't get, which was kind of good.
It's good for multiple things. One, adding flavor to whatever you're doing, especially if you're doing a lactic ferment, like kimchi or something like that. It's good medicinally if you add into things like fire ciders and stuff like that. If you're doing homemade recipes for medicine, just taking it, grinding it up, and putting it in as a side dish, as a condiment. It's great.
Problem is, if you grind it up, you want good ventilation, because that's like making tear gas in the kitchen.
Oh, I don't know. I ground up reapers in the house one time. That was not a good idea. Oh god,
that's
my eyes hurt just thinking about that. So I figured out why our panel was being weird. I forgot to hit start webinar on Zoom. So sorry, people who are watching through Zoom exclusively. The full conversation is on the Facebook. I just completely forgot to hit the right button on Zoom. So, oh well.
Hey, Tom's watching. What's up, man?
Hey, Tom, and hey, Bo. We've got more people. Yay. But as for...
Kids still love Daddy Bear. Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, what? I missed part of the conversation. What?
Tom Rognaby writes the Daddy Bear stories, which are absolutely wonderful. And we're all trying to get him to write more.
You should write more, Tom. I haven't read them, but if people are recommending them, then totally write more.
It's worth reading. It's very worth reading.
But as for what I started growing, I started simple. I was like zucchinis and tomatoes and a few little herbs. I started out, I didn't want to overwhelm myself because I'm the kind of person who can dive into things and just get swallowed by them. So I knew with gardening that I wanted to start little. So I was itty bitty. What all do you grow now? Other than my tomatoes, I will grow cucumbers, and I haven't grown zucchini in a while, but I think I'm going to do that this year. And my husband really likes banana peppers, and so I'll do those and then pickle them at the end of the season. And sometimes we just actually just eat them all before I get a chance to pickle them. But I grow basil with my tomatoes. I grow a few flowers for my pollinators. And then I also have a berry garden where I've got some blueberries, some blackberries, some raspberries, and I'm experimenting with strawberries, but they did not do too well last year because I fertilized them too much, which made them they focused on growing
Lots
the
of
green more so
leaves.
than the berries. Yeah. And so I've gotta try that differently this year once I get them in the ground. But I feel like I grow something else too, but I forgot what it was. Oh, I tried growing a lemon tree once, and it was one of the best things I ever grew. But every single year I get a tropical plant, we get some kind of surprise frost, and it kills it. And I can try to bring it in and try to warm it up, and it just doesn't do it. So for now, I've given up on tropical plants. But I basically have a kitchen garden. I love to eat garden food, and I love to cook with it. So how about you, Cedar? What do you grow these days?
Oh, let's see here. Well, so my goal when I was living up in New Hampshire was to have as many different varieties of berries as I could grow on the farm. So when I came down here to Ohio, I didn't really have much of a garden for several years because I was just too busy, and we lived in a little tiny house. So when we bought this house 3 years ago, I was like, berries, must do all the berries. So I have blackberries, red raspberries, domestic raspberries, wild black raspberries. I put in elderberries. I have a gooseberry plant, a red currant plant, service berries, and high bush cranberries. The blueberries did not do well, unfortunately. And then last 2 years ago, 2 years ago, I got passion flower vine. So this year I'm hoping to actually get fruit from that. Last year the fruit did not develop fully. So this year I'm hoping that I can actually get fruit, but the flowers are amazing. So I'll keep growing it just for that. And I do vegetables and other things, but the berries have always been my passion plants.
They're just so good. There is nothing like a garden grown berry. They're a whole other level of flavor.
Well, and they're more fast and rewarding to grow than putting in fruit trees. I mean, I put in a bunch of fruit trees when I moved in here too, but I probably won't get to see fruit off of them before we move out. So.
Yeah. I think when I put in my blueberries, I bought them already somewhat grown, and I think even then it was like 2 or 3 years before I started getting really good crops. And now that I think of it, I probably should have started getting crops a little bit earlier, but birds kept getting at them, and so finally I put nets over them. So who knows how long I've actually been getting crops.
Bird netting is kind of a must with most kinds of berries.
Oh yeah.
And the strawberries, and your strawberries, the slugs will go after those, and you can't net for that.
Well, now there's a trick with that. Go buy some cheap coffee and then sprinkle it around, just like a handful of coffee, sprinkle it, keep the slugs out.
Coffee grounds. We used to save all of the used coffee grounds, Dad and I did, and we used that for putting around things to keep the slugs away.
Oh, and Tom says beer for slugs also.
Yes, they're attracted to beer, and they'll drown in it if you put out a saucer.
Now, one of the extra upsides to using the coffee, though, is it's like crack cocaine for worms.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is.
Your garden, it will draw the worms in.
Mm-hmm. We also used to put out signs by the road saying leaves wanted, and people would bring all their leaves to us, and we would have windrows of leaves, compost piles, and man, did we get some amazing night crawlers going up in those.
Nice. Oh, we have a question from a while back that I actually forgot to ask. What do you guys do about weeds? How do you keep weeds out of your gardens? Do you do anything in particular?
I've done a bunch of different things for it. One is I have planted through black plastic. It's not attractive, but it keeps the weeds down and the moisture you tend to have to water less for it. But these days, what I do usually is mulch.
Yeah,
Straw.
same here. That's what I do.
Don't use hay to mulch. I have learned that the hard way. My dad did that one year.
What happens? I haven't done it before.
We rake the neighborhood. I mean, we go down here. We got a couple of neighbors that let us rake their yards. If somebody has a black walnut tree in their yard, do not use the leaves from the black walnut because you won't get anything to grow. Black walnut gives off a particular enzyme that gets into the soil and causes things not to grow. That's how it keeps things from growing around it.
Yes, they're allopathic. There's a few things like that. As far as mulching with hay, it's got seeds in it. You will have aggressive weeds. You actually make it worse than you had it before. I was not happy.
That depends on how loose your soil is. Like most of our beds, we started off with a scoop of sand and a scoop of black gold from down Days Hardware. And that left a loose enough mixture that when I used straw and hay just as a cover, for the winter, it'd start to come up, but it was easy to pluck out.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't hard to get rid of.
Straw, straw doesn't have the seeds, so you'll have an easier time of it.
The one downside to that mixture of sand and black gold is it tends to hold a lot of moisture. So if you need stuff, or if you need soil that's good for dry feeded plants, don't use that.
Yeah.
I'm learning all kinds of things. I just had weeds. I had produce and weeds and produce and weeds. And,
so the trick to that, Chris, is to figure out which kinds of weeds you can eat and harvest those.
Oh, burdock. We get some nice burdock.
Aren't dandelions edible too?
I don't eat any bird dogs.
Dandelions are darn good eating.
I've been to try some because I have them all over my yard. I forget which ones I've sprayed with weed killer, and it's kind of, I don't want that in my mouth.
Well, we've grown beds of dandelions before, and we harvested the greens and made salads and pestos. But you take the root and you roast it. Crap, I forgot what it was for now. There's a medicinal
coffee substitute.
Well, it's a coffee substitute, but there's actually a medicinal with roasted dandelion root. It falls in with like chicory. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Well, chicory and dandelion are closely related, and chicory is a common coffee substitute, but I knew you could do that with dandelion root. I just haven't tried it myself.
Yeah, it just takes a while to get them all together.
I'll just drink coffee.
Oh, Chris, did you get to answer the previous question, the what do you grow now question?
Pretty much the same thing as I always grew. I mean, I grow the same things over, and I grow a lot of weeds. I'm really good at growing weeds.
Yeah.
Chris, I'm going to have to come teach you what weeds are edible.
You'll have to post a picture of your weed garden, and we'll see what's.
One of the biggest problems I've got is this whole last year, like 6 months of it, I worked away from home because I would be up at Tish and Rich's house in Dunlap working on theirs. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't get to tend the garden, and it seems like it always ends up working out that way. The work gets in the way of the garden. Well, I'm not working anymore now. I got like 3 small projects, and then, I'm writing. So I might be able to actually do a nice garden this year.
Nice. We have 2 questions. One from Facebook, one from Zoom, and from Ray on Zoom. He asks, do any of the panelists use complementary plants? I do with tomato and basil, because I've heard that they grow well together, and I just love the smell of basil and cooking and using it when I cook with tomatoes. So I think those are the only 2 I use.
Yeah. I pair marigolds with my tomatoes because they help keep the pests down.
I use marigolds for that reason too. And plus they're really hard to kill. At least for me.
Yes, that too.
So that's a perk. Like I'm the sort of gardener where if I'm gonna grow something, I want to eat it, but I realized that my garden produced better when I had flowers in it because it attracts the pollinators.
So if you can find the little lemon taquitas, they're little single marigolds. They're hard to find, but they're edible.
Ooh.
And they actually have flavor, unlike most other edible flowers. They have a little spiciness to them. They're really nice.
I'm looking this up.
Yellow wood sorrel is good.
Wood sorrel is excellent. Yeah.
I don't like squirrels.
Well, that is one thing about a garden. You're likely to grow squirrels whether you want to or not.
I have really lucked out in that I have only seen one squirrel in my yard ever.
Oh, you
and
don't
I have no idea how I managed that.
The little buggers were still in green tomatoes off the vines last year.
Woo!
Yeah, okay. They were still in my plums. They were still in the tomatoes. They were still in my apples. They stole all the cherries. They're evil.
Goodness.
I have got bunnies, and the bunnies ate my hazelnut saplings and one of my plum trees. They actually like gnawed it right through.
No.
Oh no.
I have a few yard rabbits, but they mostly, my yard is set up so that there's yard, and then there's this sort of lightly forested ravine that separates the back of my yard from the next neighborhood over. We're like in a suburban area that just happens to have a lot of trees in it. And so the rabbits tend to stay down there, and they never really venture far up to the house. And so I lucked out there too. But I have raised beds, and so I put a little fence around them too, just to help and just in case. But yeah.
With the complementary plants, onions and garlic, marigolds, anything like that, in pretty much any other bed mixture is going to be good. The only thing that you don't want to really mix is garlic and beans. The beans give off something that the garlic doesn't like, or one or the other. But anything that's a strong scent flavor, like the horseradish, you can plant it, and it will help to keep pests away from whatever you planted it near.
Oh, nice. I didn't even think about that.
Any place you plant horseradish, expect to have horseradish forever,
Yeah.
and it will spread. It's kind of like mint. You want to plant it someplace that you don't mind.
If do not plant mint anywhere unless you absolutely want it there, because it will grow outside of it. And mints include oregano, catnip, majoram. That's a mint. And they will just keep going and going and going, and they'll grow way outside of where you originally planted them. And you just have to keep mowing them. And then you put a boundary up. It's like, you stay there, you little bastards, or I'm going to cut you down. And then you take the mower and just go, because that's what you do.
And it smells amazing.
Oh, yes, it does. Like I've never been a perfume wearer, but sometimes I'll just go out in my garden and rub my face in the basil just so I can smell like basil. It's so wonderful. We have another question, and this is, let me scroll up. There's been a lot of comments. This is from Bill on Facebook, and he says, any recommendations for getting rid of bindweed? I'm not actually familiar with bindweed, so this is a question for you guys.
So bindweed has brittle roots. So if you hand pull bindweed, it will break off, and there will still be pieces of root left in the ground, and it will come back. The only really effective way to get rid of bindweed is to keep weeding over and over and over again. And eventually, if you stay on top of it, you can get rid of it.
Anyone else?
Sounds like the hard way.
Unfortunately, with that one, there really isn't much of an alternative.
I don't even remember that back up in West Virginia. And, growing up, Papa called a lot of things different than what they're actually called.
Morning glory.
Okay, now I know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
It's a variety of morning glory.
Morning glory is just evil.
Yes.
They're pretty,
yes,
but they're evil.
All right.
No, I almost grew some last year, so that makes me glad I didn't actually get them to take root.
Okay, so the domestic morning glories are not quite so bad, but the wild bindweed has a little white flower, and that stuff is persistent.
Cool. All right. My next question, do you guys prefer standard ground gardens, raised gardens, or container gardens? And also, have you tried any other exciting types of garden, like hydroponic gardening or anything like that? I like raised gardens myself because I say I'm going to do this and I never do, but I like the idea that raised gardening can allow me to customize my soil for each specific box. And plus, I just think they look neat.
Well, okay, see, when we moved in here 14 years ago, we ran a garden in the ground, tilled it up, years and years and years, truckloads of horse manure tossed in, mixed in. And see, we've got the problem of we have clay on top of a rock slab. I have no topsoil. So We get the
That does
little bit of
complicate
rain in
things.
the spring. You know, we get a couple of days of drizzle. So all that clay swells up and it swells up. And then we get a gully washer. And everything that I put into it is now washed off into the back of the neighborhood. So I gave up on trying to actually do anything in the ground itself. And we went to raised beds because I can control it. I can maintain the soil and it doesn't get washed away. And it didn't matter what I was doing. It kept getting washed away every year. I mean, probably 24 truckloads of manure mixed in, and it's nothing but clay out here. So, you know, it just gets frustrating.
Yeah. I've done pretty much every kind of gardening, everything from in-ground to raised beds to some highly experimental polyculture, which is gardening in conjunction with aquaponics. In other words, we had a high tunnel set up with the trough down the middle we filled full of water, and we had fish in it, and then that water got cycled through the beds to filter out the fish waste, which is excellent fertilizer.
Oh, yeah.
So that was an experimental setup. We had intended to eventually grow food fish, but we were using feeder goldfish for the experiment, and it was a really interesting experiment. If you look up polyculture, they're doing it a lot in Hawaii, and they're growing things like 12-inch long prawns, which you can only do if it's warm enough, sadly, where we were living, because I wanted prawns. But so I've done some interesting stuff here. I have a similar problem to William. We have clay. I tried to garden in ground last year and it was a miserable failure. Even my zucchini died. It was that bad.
Oh, wow.
So I'm going to be building some raised beds this year. I put it on hold because of what's going on with my job search right now. I don't know if we'll still be living here at the end of the gardening season. So I'm not going to put several $100s into beds if we're going to be moving.
Yeah.
Buckets work just as good too.
Yep, we've got some containers, and that's probably what we'll do again this year is container gardening.
Yeah, when I first started gardening, I worked in containers just because it was more manageable for me.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Chris? What do you do?
I do in ground because this whole area where I'm at is central Tennessee farmland, flat. It's and this particular place's subdivision used to be a farm. So I mean they grew corn and soybeans, and they would alternate every year.
Mm-hmm.
So you know the ground's fertile enough. I mean it's really hard ground, but if you catch it at the right time, I mean it's pretty fertile. I mean, we're going to work on building, you know, some fertilizer into it, do some horse manure,
that
sort of stuff, and build the ground up a little bit more. But it did pretty well the first year. The second year wasn't quite as well, but it's going. But now, as I till it, I'm going to fertilize it and till the fertilizer into the ground, and do a little bit of compost and stuff like that to try to build it up this year before I plant.
If you get horse manure, make sure it's aged horse manure, or you will have weeds like you had no idea.
Yes, we used to have horses when I was a kid. I do know what you're talking about.
Yes.
And if you've got trees there nearby that you can pull the leaves from, use that between your rows, man, and that'll keep the weeds down.
Yep, and it'll add to the soil.
Yeah, and you can till that in at the start of the next season and pull all the leaves from that year and use it for the new mulch cover.
Yep.
I've heard that you can use newspaper to do that too. Now,
I
don't know if it's yet. We've got a whole bunch of newspaper we were going to try this year.
It works, but you got to weigh it down because otherwise it's going to blow away.
Right.
Yeah.
I've done lasagna gardening using either newspaper or cardboard down on the soil and then mulch on top of that. It keeps it down, but it makes a little bit more effective weed barrier that way.
Yeah, and you don't have to use the store-bought fabric. Now,
Right.
A lot of people they think of these raised beds as you got to go and spend all this money on them when you really don't. To do a raised bed, just use some old lumber that you might pick up. Somebody might have some scrap lumber, build a bed out of it, clear it out, lay in newspaper and cardboard in the bottom, fill it with dirt. That's all you need. or our local, we have this local sawmill down here that gives away slab wood for free.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah, I can go down here and get oak slabs. I can cut it up and use it for firewood, or I can use it for bed building.
Yeah, I just go to Lowe's and pick up pressure treated wood, and that's what I use for mine.
And see, now, used to be you didn't want to do that because the chemicals in the pressure treat.
Right.
You'd have to
nowadays it's a different chemical.
Yeah.
Right.
It used to have arsenic in the pressure treated. I ran across that a lot in building. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want arsenic leaching into my garden. That'd be bad.
That would be bad.
Oh, we do have a question from Steven on Facebook. Says, shouldn't you be careful with adding too much or too many oak leaves because of acidity? I don't ever use oak leaves, so this is a question for you guys.
I don't have any problems with it. Now, the acidity, you got to watch out with pine needles.
Yes. In fact, that's one of the things I'm considering here with my blueberries is finding pine needles to mulch them with, because my soil is too alkaline. I need the acidity.
Yeah, blueberries love that.
They want the soil as acid as they can get it.
Oh, and we do have a comment on Zoom too, referring to newspapers. Karen says she hears the ink can be sort of bad for the soil, but she loves to use old craft paper or corrugated cardboard for weeds and lasagna gardens.
Mm-hmm.
So how does the ink affect the soil? I've never used newspaper in my
garden. Doesn't that I can tell.
So in theory, I mean, it's newsprint ink, and if you have a lot of it and it breaks down and gets into the soil, in theory, it could add chemicals that you didn't want that can get taken up by your plant roots. But I think you'd have to use an awful lot of it for a long time. These days, with newspapers going away, I don't know that that's a problem we're going to have for much longer.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Now, here's another question. We talked about weeds. What about pests? What kind of pests do you guys have, and how do you deal with them in your garden? Cedar looks like she has an answer.
Hornworms. That and cutworms. Those things are evil, and all you can do is just take them and pluck them off and squish them. With the exception, if you ever find that nice big fat green hornworm that has these little white things sticking on it, leave it. Do not touch it, because a parasitic wasp has laid its eggs inside of it. Those little white things are the eggs about to hatch to launch more parasitic wasps.
Ooh.
Don't touch that one. Let it live. Let it eat that little bit, because it's going to supply the rest of the garden with protection.
Well, that's
you can actually mail order those parasitic wasps too. Or you used to be able to, and you can also mail order ladybugs for controlling aphids. And Bacillus thuringius, which is a microbe that attacks certain kinds of pests as well.
Well, you can also order praying mantis.
Oh yeah, no, there's a lot of people buy praying mantis ootheca, the egg cases, just so their kids can watch them hatch out because it's cool. But praying mantis are great friends to have in the garden.
Oh, I want to buy a whole bunch of praying mantises now. I just think they're cool.
The pests I get and I absolutely hate are the Japanese beetles.
Oh my gosh, yes, I get those too. I hate those things so much. And it's like they appear overnight and suddenly devour half your garden where I am.
Yes.
So I get those, and I get, occasionally I will get leaf-footed bugs. And for me, I just found that if I make a mixture of neem oil and water and spray my plants down, you have to make sure you do it late in the day. Because if you do it when the sun is high, it'll burn your plants a little bit. But I found that it's a simple, natural way to get rid of pests like that. And sometimes whenever the Japanese beetles are at their height, I'll just go pick them off and squish them. But because they get crazy sometimes.
Well, you can get traps for them too.
Yes.
The traps actually work pretty good. I just threw a link into the chat there if you want to grab it, Heather.
Oh yeah.
And it'll show the hornworm infected with the parasitic wasp, if you want to show that off to everybody on a screen share.
Let's see here.
One of the things I do for natural pest control is I'll actually dust with diatomaceous earth. But that, I mean, if it rains, you got to replace that. But I find that works really well for the flea beetles on my roses.
Well, that works for the stink bugs and the shield bugs too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and diatomaceous earth is nice because unlike a chemical controls, they can't get a resistance to it. It's a purely physical death by a million cuts.
Yeah. It gets into the chinks of their armor, and it literally cuts them to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they dehydrate.
Nice.
Awesome.
Well, not nice for them, but nice for us. All right, I am going to share my screen so you guys can see the, let's see here, the worm with the okay, share.
With the parasites.
All right, yep, there is the worm with all the fun little parasitic wasps on it. So that's the one you want to leave.
Yeah, if you see that in the garden, leave it, because those things will hatch and it will create more parasitic wasps, which will lay more in there. And these things are prolific in North Georgia. You go out there, you find the first one, guaranteed you got at least a dozen of those. And finding every one of them is not easy. You got to sit there and look real close, branch by branch, leaf by leaf, and you'll find them eventually. And if you got chickens, chuck them in there. The chickens will love you.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. We used to, when we had chickens in a garden, I'd actually collect bugs, like the hornworms or beetles or whatever, into a bucket and then toss them to the chickens.
Nice.
Now,
and you just start
when
keeping
you're
chickens
tilling
for
your
that reason.
soil, or anytime you're moving your soil around, if you find a grub, usually those little white grubs that you find in the dirt, that's the Japanese beetles larvae.
Ah.
So squish them, chuck those to the chickens.
And the big white grubs that are curved really tight like a U, those are June bug larvae.
Okay.
And they live on the roots of things, so you don't want them either.
Oh yeah, okay. I never even
I'm learning so much.
I never even thought about June bugs being bad for a garden, because every time I see a June bug in my yard, it's like the drunkest thing. It's always bopping into everything. And it's like, how do you even survive?
Now, have any of you started your seedlings yet?
Yes.
No.
Well, I just buy mine from Lowe's.
I do too.
My son really, really wanted to start plants from seed this year. So we ordered seeds and they came in a couple of weeks back, and we actually sat down and plotted out when they all needed to be started. So he's got first round started under grow lights, and second round we will be starting sometime this next week.
Well, if I can get this to work for me, I got a show and tell. Who do you use for your seeds?
This year we ordered from Seeds and Such.
We've had really good luck with Baker Creek.
I have some issues with Baker Creek's politics, but yes, other than that, they're really good stuff. We used to use for heirloom seeds. We used to use, gosh darn it, I can't remember the name now, but they're started out as people who would collect seeds and share them. Seed savers. I don't know why I couldn't remember that. We've lost William.
Oh, there he is. He's picturing the plants.
Okay. Yeah, let's see if I can get it to, let's see, show up here. Spotlight for everyone. There it is. He's showing his plants. All right.
Oh, some of those babies are a little leggy.
They are well, we started hardening them off. Meg started taking them out today for about an hour. We'll get them hardened off a little bit here and there. But kohlrabi, peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers. That's our little setup here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, remove spotlight. All right. I'm learning all sorts of new functions today. All right, cool.
Yeah.
What is it? By the way, what does it mean to harden off a plant? I've never started from seedling, so this is a new term for me.
So hardening off is because if you start a plant, have you ever heard the term hothouse plant?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing of they're really protected, they're sheltered, they're warm all the time. What we have to do is kind of rough them up a little bit.
Yeah, move them outside and inside so that they get a little bit of a adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, if
they toughen up.
Them out too long, if they've been inside, then they can burn up in the UV.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they get sunburn just like people.
Ah.
So when you move them outside, if they've been started inside, you want to put them in the shade at first.
Yep.
Cool.
And
we have another question that I missed. This is from Bo on Facebook, and he says, so we could grow blueberry bushes under pine trees. successfully. Could we do that because of the way that the needles
Not
affect the
under.
acidity?
You still need to get good sun to them.
Okay, yeah.
Near pine trees, probably not directly under. Although blueberries, some kinds of blueberries are amazingly shade tolerant. When I lived in New Hampshire, we had some that grew right tucked up under the tree line.
I'm hoping to plant some blueberries this year too.
I love my blueberries. That actually leads me into my next question, which is, what's your favorite thing to grow? Mine is hands down blueberries. I love them so much. They're just so good and so tasty, and they very rarely actually make it into my house because I just go right on my riding porch, and when I get hungry, I just go get a handful of blueberries. And like I clean them off a little bit with some stuff that I bring outside, but it's like there's nothing like fresh blueberries right off the bush. How about you, Chris?
I would say mine's probably tomatoes. I love growing them, and I love to can them. I make salsa. I make just canned tomatoes. I make tomato juice. You know, it's probably one of my favorite things to grow.
There's too many things to pick.
Seriously, I mean there's a lot.
I think tomatoes are my second favorite easily because I make really good spaghetti sauce with them, and it's the sauce. My husband loves spaghetti sauce, and I make just really, really amazing sauce. Like it sounds like I'm boasting, and I am, but yeah,
Be proud.
I found a really good recipe, and there's just nothing like that particular sauce made with garden tomatoes. Like there's a distinct difference if you use store-bought tomatoes, and it's just summer spaghetti sauce. It's just amazing.
That also depends on what you're putting into your fertilizer and everything, how you're feeding your plants and how you're treating your plants.
Yeah, I basically with my garden, I just use what is it called? It's like a cow manure mix. It's Black Cow, I think is the name of it that I use. And then I have a little like tomato food that I'll put on them. But yeah, I don't do anything particularly fancy with my tomatoes, but they come out well. So yeah, I love them. How about you, Cedar? What's your favorite thing to grow?
Oh, my favorite thing to grow and stand out in the garden and eat would probably be raspberries. There's absolutely nothing like a sun-warm, ripe raspberry off the bush. But I also love to grow tomatoes, and I love growing all the different kinds of heirloom tomatoes because there's so many different flavors. I've grown everything from yellow pear tomatoes that are have almost no acidity to black crim, which is just like this deep, rich, meaty. They're kind of amazing. And Mr. Stripey, which is this big yellow thing that's as big as a baby's head. They're huge.
Wow.
We did some Cherokee purples.
Purples, yeah.
Cherokee purples
This year, and they were nice.
Yeah. I grew some pink oxheart. Those were
Oh my gosh, I love oxheart tomatoes. I grew them. I went to a local like gardening organization's plant sale, and I'd never grown oxheart tomatoes before, but they had one left, and I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And I grew like I got one really good oxheart tomato off of them, and it looked literally like a human heart. It was the most metal thing I've ever seen, and it was so good. But unfortunately, that particular year, I think I went on vacation, and my oxheart tomatoes, like they decided they were going to fruit like and ripen fully while I was away from the house, and so I didn't get to pick them, and I lost most of them, which is sad. So
there's determinate and indeterminate tomatoes, and determinate will set all at once, and you'll be flooded with them. Yep. And indeterminate will just keep growing and fruiting and growing and fruiting, and it's less of a flood.
I'm gonna have to grow some indeterminate tomatoes then, because I've got a variety now, but I was so bummed when I lost most of the oxhearts. It made me sad because they were so good. Did you get to answer, William? Your favorite thing to grow?
Yeah.
He couldn't decide.
Well, it's hard to choose. I mean, okay, well, tomatoes. As soon as they start coming in, you get the green ones. Like, okay, cool. I can make my little green fried green tomatoes, or I can do a green tomato
relish.
Chow chow?
Chow chow.
Well, not even that. I do this little curry fried tomato cake thing.
Ooh.
It's really good. So you just take the green tomatoes, you chop them up, a little bit of onions in there, some curry powder mix, salt, pepper, and a little bit of cornmeal and flour. Just mix it up, and you make this patty that you just fry up. Oh my God, it's so good. But,
Sounds good.
Nice.
Now I want one.
For the year, you got fresh tomatoes, and then at the end of the season, you take all the green ones and you pickle those off with your peppers. But you get the peppers, but okay, my blackberries. I don't know about this year. This year I might not get jack because I've had to move everything, but twice the size of my thumb, from about that big around, double that, and that's how big my blackberries have gotten. But
have you got loganberries?
No.
Okay.
They're a thornless blackberry, but I water them. I fertilize the hell out of them, the barrel of horse manure, watered from there. Then we top off with extra water to knock the stench down and get everything down, because it hangs in there for a while. It's hard to choose. Now, something that it popped up in my head. If you're growing tomatoes and you're growing hot peppers, do not grow them near each other because they can cross-pollinate.
Ooh.
And you can get hot tomatoes. Just the same as any of your sweet peppers. Don't grow them near your hot peppers.
I did that one year. I planted 2 jalapeno plants, but it was right in the midst of all my banana peppers.
Yep. Well,
and I ended up with hot bananas.
I at least grow jalapenos and cayennes every year. We usually have bell peppers and banana peppers. One year I had reapers, scorpions, and cayennes too. And the reapers and scorpions, they were about as hot as a habanero, and they tasted so good. You had that smoky flavor to them. The kids loved it because I bit into a cayenne, and I'll go out, pick fresh from the vine. I have my hot peppers with dinner, and it's great. Just num. Man, I bit into that cayenne and I started crying. There was no waiting for the heat. I mean, it was immediate. I was on fire, and it was like, my God, this is the hottest thing I've ever bit into. So keep them separated if you don't want cross-pollination.
I'm actually really tempted to try to grow a hot tomato now, though, just for like salsa uses, because that has some really interesting applications there.
Guaranteed way to do it. Get you a little soft bristle paintbrush. Hit the flower on one, hit the flower on the other. Just carry it back and forth.
I'm totally going to do that this year. I'm determined.
I've carried cayennes and habaneros and reapers through the winter, and I did the pollination myself here in the house. Just well, there's no bees, so you just sit there and you do your cross pollination. Don't cross your paintbrushes. Keep them separate so you don't get them mixed up. But it works, and you can keep them going through the winter as long as you keep the temperature right and the water right. It's a fight, but you can do it.
Yeah,
that's cool.
And I found out something a couple of years back, which is that there are sweet banana peppers and hot banana peppers.
Oh yes,
hot Hungarian hot wax.
They look identical too.
They do.
Learned that.
I didn't necessarily mind. It was just a surprise.
Yeah. I went to pick my my banana peppers once and forgot which one was the hot plant. So it was like banana pepper roulette when I tried to cook with them. It was a surprise, and I'm still trying to decide whether it was a pleasant surprise or not.
Keep you on your toes. It's all good, man.
All right, we are actually past the 9 o'clock point, but I've got a few more questions if you guys want to keep going. All right, yeah, I know some people sometimes have places to be. But my next one is, has your garden attracted any interesting yard critters? Like, I know we've talked about pests and whatnot, but one thing I've noticed with my garden is I get hummingbirds like crazy. And I started putting out hummingbird feeders so I get more. But I do all my writing outside when the weather's warm. And I've gotten to the point where every summer I have a recognizable cohort of hummingbirds, and I begin to tell each one apart. And they're just neat little creatures to have around. So do you guys have any creatures like that show up in your gardens?
I've got some rabbits here. When I was up at in Knoxville, living in the same place my dad, when we did his garden, the funniest thing we had was there was a deer and its fawn that would come out, and the deer would take a bite out of it, like just about everything. Oh. And the little baby deer would take another bite out of the same things. but it would only take a bite after its mom took a bite. So we would go out there and we would find stuff with one big bite and one little bite out of it, all the way through the garden.
Oh, that's cute, but also infuriating.
Oh yeah, I mean it was enough to make you mad, but it was so cute you couldn't really do anything about it.
Last year when we were getting things set up for spring, we were weeding out the blackberry bed, and I had let the bed. I originally had this 3-tiered arbor, and we were taking the vines and draping them over, and that way you had a walk space in there, and I had let it go wild to see how well it would take off. Oh my God, wherever a blackberry hits, it's growing a new one and it's going on all directions. So as we're weeding, we ended up finding a nest of bunnies hidden back in under the leaf mulch that we had put in there. And we caught 4 baby bunnies. I mean, just the itty bitty guys, and they were scared, but pick them up and they're like, okay, cool. Yay, little guy. All right, set you loose. And off they go. Oh, hey, there's hawks. Wow.
Oh, no.
Oh no.
I don't know if they all got away or not, because the hawks they were just sitting there circling as soon as they started seeing them. Well, kind of. I might have an issue with crows this year. Actually, I was doing dishes this past Saturday, and I was looking out the window, and there's a crow on the back of a red-tailed hawk beating the crap out of the hawk. And it's like, what in the world's going on? Here comes another crow, and he's like, yo, what's up, bro? What's up, man? And the hawk, he's doing his bounce back, and he takes off. Well, the crows are sitting there eating something, and kind of look like they had a baby squirrel. I'm not sure. It's like, what the hell just happened? So I might have a crow problem I got to deal with this year. I know I've got squirrels. We've got squirrel issues, and I'm going to catch these little buggers. I'm going to roast them up because squirrel's good.
Squirrel and dumplings.
So we have a family tradition of collecting toads and putting them in the garden. It's something I trained my kids to do because they're pest control.
Oh yeah.
So anytime we'd catch a toad, we'd take it and put it in the vegetable garden. So we always were trying to find toads, and then I taught my kids how to do it, and they would catch all kinds of toads and put them in the garden. I think half of them were escapees from the garden, but
yeah. All right, my next question, does your interest in gardening show up in your writing at all? How about Cedar? I know you mentioned you have one book that has a garden in it at least.
Well, yes. So I have a book that is a trading ship, and I was researching for it and looking at the South Sea traders and that. But what I wanted to do with it was also to have the ship have a garden in it, which, I mean, we'll read science fiction where there's gardens in space stations, and I've actually set the chicken story that I wrote that had chickens getting loose on a space station had a fairly large park in it. But having a garden on a spaceship seemed like it was just something that was kind of wild and wacky to do. So I wrote that in, and I wrote into the same thing a shop on a space station called the Greengrocer that has a moss floor.
Ooh, cool. How about you, William or Chris? Do you have any gardens in your work?
Well, my Fallen World stuff is, one of the main factions is the farmers.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So they're major gardeners. But I don't go into much detail about it. I mentioned, Pop has to go, break beans or something along those lines. That's about as much, or they're talking about cornfields or something like that. I haven't gone into a whole lot of detail about it yet.
Yeah, I have not yet in my writing either. It's mostly in the background, and in a book I haven't even published yet. But in the sequel to The Wizard's Way, there's a society, in both it and The Wizard's Way, there's a society of talking bears. And The Wizard's Way establishes that certain bears can control bees. And they do it mostly for like security and war purposes. So it's like, oh, someone's come and unleash the bees. But in book 2, you find out that it actually has massive agricultural implications.
Well,
for
it
the
would have
setting.
to, kind of.
Yeah, and so the bears are like master gardeners, and they have like almost a stranglehold over the setting's agriculture because of that. Because it's if the humans in the setting piss off the bears, they're just going to take away the bees, and no one eats. So it's so it shows up in that way. But other than that, I haven't really written any extravagant gardening into my books yet. Did you, William?
No, the most that I did was in Wildcat, and it's part of the Fallen World universe where they're just trying to survive. You know, you've got all these different plots set up, and they're trying to get honeybees established and things like that.
Mostly mentioned in the background, kind of.
Yeah.
But it's there. You know, it's a and in Fallen World, it's actually a great thing because you touch on little subjects like that, and somebody who knows about gardening can fill in the blanks.
Yeah, well, it's just like, I tossed in about the bees at the Greenbrier where they had just got them established and all, and I tossed a couple of little nuggets of info in there.
Yep.
Any beekeeper that reads that, they'll know exactly what's going on.
Cool. Oh, we have a question on Facebook. This is from Bo. The book that has the trade ship in it with the garden, was that Tanager's, or how do you pronounce that? Tanager's Fledgling?
Tanager's Fledglings, yes.
Okay, so yes, it was that book, Bo. And then Flux Runners has a couple of scenes too, Bo said.
Oh,
all
yeah.
right, my
Forgot about that.
It's bad when you've written so many books you forget what's in them.
Thanks, Bo.
Yes, thank you. All right, my final question, this will close us out, is what advice would you give to someone starting their first garden? And anyone can start.
Don't go overboard. Start small and learn it as you go instead of plowing up a big old hole in your yard out here and planting everything and watching the weeds consume it all. Just start small and work your way up.
I would say the same thing too, and also give your plants space, because one thing that I learned is that plants will get bigger than you expect them to at the beginning of the growing season if you've never grown a garden before. And I frequently, my first few years, I had tomatoes like growing on top of each other because I planted them too close together in my bed. And I did the same thing with marigolds too. I was like, oh, these marigolds aren't going to get big. They got huge. And but yeah, I would also say, like, I occasionally have people ask me like who are new to the area, because I'm the only person in my neighborhood who is actually from South Carolina now. They'll ask me what to plant in this area, and I usually say just like go to the local nursery or the local Lowe's, and just like, or the local like home improvement store in general, and just see what's there, because I mean that's the easiest way to figure out what to plant, and just grow what you like to eat.
Find your local extension agent and ask questions, and they will be more than happy to answer. My advice would always be to start the year before you plan to start gardening, because that way you can build beds, establish soil, and prepare a good place rather than be trying to fight grass and weeds and stuff.
Yeah, well, and if you can get leaf litter and all that you can lay out and kill the grass off and prepare the space, absolutely. For anyone starting out, like I said, start small. Buckets, little containers, things like that. If you get these big aspirations about using manure, let it sit for a year. Put it in your compost and let it sit. If you get chicken manure, do not put it in your garden. You're
not for at least 2 years.
Everything that you got, and it will die. It's high in ammonia, and it will kill off everything. Put it into your compost, let it sit, or put it into a barrel, like half full of chicken manure, fill it with water, let it sit for a year. Then
it will stink to high heaven. Oh my God.
Put it in the back corner of the property near the compost. But when you take water from that to water your garden, your plants are going to be loving it. They are going to love you. Just go back over and water everything real good afterwards so you can knock the stench down.
Yeah.
But it's great fertilizer. It really is. Just don't use it direct.
Yeah, we've got a really good piece of advice in the comments on Facebook too. This is from Janie, and she says, "Watch out for the volunteer plants and don't let them all grow because she's had some spaghetti squash take over."
Oh God.
I agree with that. My strawberries right now, like at the end of the growing season, I just kind of let my strawberries do whatever because the base plant doesn't produce the next year anyway. It's always the runners, and at least I think that's right. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm not good with
The
strawberries.
base plant will
but-
produce for 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so
Janie,
but
Janie squash, it has become an issue. Yeah.
yeah, my strawberries, I've got strawberries everywhere. I've got more strawberry plants than I will ever need in my life because they volunteer.
I grew a monster Hubbard squash last year that volunteered out of my compost pile.
Oh no. Tomatoes. I have so many great
yes.
tomato volunteers that pop up in the yard, and the yarrow. We had yarrow in one spot, and it's like in half the yard now.
Yarrow is a weed, though. I mean, it's so happy growing everywhere it wants to grow.
And the worst part is I can't get the mullein to freaking grow.
We got 1 year we got tomatoes from this nursery that was owned by my uncle's father-in-law, and I was living in Sharps Chapel. It was up there. We were doing a big garden, and we bought 100 tomato plants and 2 tomato plants. You know, the little ones, the little cherry tomatoes. So we planted them all, and when they came up, there was 100 friggin' tomatoes and 2 regular tomatoes.
Oh no!
So that year, you know, we pulled all the plants up and we threw them all down in the gully, and then we had that place for about 12 years, I guess. And every year the gully was full of tomatoes.
And cherry tomatoes will bear heavy.
Yeah. And you could can them. I mean, if you took the time to peel every little one, but oh hell no.
Well, no. You make cherry bombs. You take them, you throw them into the jar, a couple hot peppers, do you pickle them, mix, can them, you're good.
I'm gonna have to try that. I grew a ton of little tomatoes last year, and they just became snacks. I just eat them like candy. I love them.
Yep.
I actually have a bed, like I have a tiny bed that was just remained empty for whatever reason last year, and I just started throwing scraps of vegetables into it, and it's kind of become my volunteer bed. Like I just kind of see what grows there, and then if something stays alive, it gets to be in the proper garden, and so it's like I get a surprise plant, and so that's kind of fun.
Well, you'll probably get surprise hybrids.
Yeah, I probably will. But that's part of the fun.
I got a question. What is the weirdest volunteer plant that you have had pop up?
I had.
Okay, go ahead.
You can go.
All right, so, all right, and the clean out is on the front of the house. So I pull the clean out, snake the line and all that, you know, but you've got a mess out in the front. And I covered it all up with mulch and everything so it wouldn't be a problem. And we had tomato plants grow there. Poop tomatoes. That's about as bad as it gets.
Oh my gosh.
I did not use
that though. It's free tomatoes.
Oh, that's kind of amazing. I think my there's no story that can top that. I think I had a plant volunteer in this little ravine where I just dumped grass. I have no idea how the seed even got there. I think it was some kind of squash, but I think I accidentally mowed over it. So I don't even know what it was, but it was a weird plant that I know I didn't grow in my garden. So I don't know how it got there, but yeah, I don't think I've had any extremely weird volunteer plants as of yet. I really wish that my old Oxheart tomatoes would volunteer, but because they don't sell them at local garden centers. So I've got to go back to that one specific sale and hope that one gardener is growing them again. But yeah, that's it.
Well, I've had 2 interesting volunteers that it caused me to actually do some research, look them up, figure out what they are. Because it's like, okay, cool. What are you? And can I use you? Velvet leafweed, which
Lord.
At one point, it is a pain. It is a weed. You want to dispose of it as quickly as possible. But at one point, it was actually grown in competition with hemp for the fibrous content. It was actually used as toilet paper for a lot of farms around this area.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is very, very velvety and soft. And I can see why they would want to use that versus, any other regular old leaf.
And they're big too, the leaves are.
Are they white?
No, you're thinking of mullein, Chris.
Okay. Well, my mother-in-law has a bunch of them around the outside of her garden that are a white, really soft leaf. That's why I was wondering.
No,
That's
that
mullein.
might be lamb's ear.
Oh, that too.
I think that's what she called it, maybe.
Okay,
She may have
it's
called it
probably lamb's ear. Those are
Okay.
really good for doing compresses and things like that. But the second one, it kept throwing me. Had these big, beautiful flowers on it, and then got this weird looking seed pod, like something out of a sci-fi movie. And when I finally identified it, it turned out to be Jimson weed. And it is another one of those pest weeds. And I saved the seed pods just because it's like, all right, well, it popped up, so I'm going to save the seeds because that's the way I do it. But Jimson is one of those that don't mess with it with bare hands, really. You don't want the juices on you because it is a highly toxic plant and psychedelic that will kill you.
Or at the very least, make you hallucinate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of my question. So does anyone have anything they want to add before I close this out, or any more questions from the audience? Anything? All right.
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, we've gone over, but this is fun.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, I have too. This has been a whole lot of fun. So again, I'm just going to have everyone go down the line and say who you are and what you've written. And so I'll start. I'm HP Holo. I wrote The Wizard's Way, which is about wizards and sword fighting pugs and bears that control bees. And again, and if you look in the description for this video, I've got a giveaway going on with a few other authors where we're giving away a whole bunch of signed steampunk books. So you should totally enter if you want to try to win those. And also, here is my cat. And so that's it.
You know,
right. She's normally really adorable, and then when I put her on camera, she's like,
she's like, ah!
Doesn't care at all. Like, but she's adorable, I promise. All right, William, you can go next.
Oh, okay. William Joseph Roberts. Let's see. I got props. Flux Runners. Yeah, space opera, Firefly, Chaos, adult content. Widowmakers. Oh crap. Cedar. There it is. Yeah, look. World War II. Gremlins. Aircrew. Blowing things up. Wildcat. Post-apocalyptic. Trying to survive in the hills of West Virginia. And if you play Fallout, you'll love this. And then the thing that me and Chris wrote, Smuggler's Run. Let's see. If brain work. If space
the rundown in space.
It would be Smuggler's Run.
Nice. Cedar, how about you?
Well, I'm Cedar Sanderson. I've written a whole bunch of things, but if you want a easy way to start, my novella Jade Star is free until the 13th of this month. So you can go on Amazon and grab yourself a free book and see if the first taste is good enough to keep you going into the paid stuff.
Nice. And Christopher.
I'm Christopher Woods, and if you want to see the full lineup of books, it's theprofessionalliar.com. And, well, I've written Soul Guard, which is a fantasy series. This Fallen World, I've got 3 or 4 books in that, and there's 14 in it so far with various writers. And the Four Horsemen universe with Chris Kennedy and Mark Wandry, I've got a couple of books and several short stories in that. And recently, the Salvage System, I was working with William. I hate calling him William because I know him as Scott or Hillbilly, but but we did the Smuggler's Run, and we're working on Smuggler's Quest now. This is our project for probably this and next month. We'll be finishing up the sequel. But yeah, go to theprofessionalliar.com and check it out.
Cool. What name do you actually go by, William? Because I've heard like 4 different ones at this point.
Hillbilly, asshole. I don't.
Those are the ones I call him.
I don't know anymore. Oh, I forgot something.
Yes,
Here's a freebie. Short story Closet Cases, part of the Flux Runners universe, is up on Amazon for free, and I got links on my page, WilliamJosephRoberts.com, and I am part of a giveaway with Dave Butler starting on Monday, I think, and the link for that is already up, and I'll put it out again on all my pages later.
Yeah, and you can feel free to leave those links in the comments too. so people can find them easily. And I'll put them in the description too once you have them up there. But yeah, well, thank you everyone for joining me tonight. This was a whole lot of fun, and thanks also, man, my tongue got tied up. Thanks also to the audience. We got some really good questions tonight. So thank you all for spending your evening with us, and we hope to see you next time. So bye.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.